4 agenda items. We'll begin with the first agenda item, which is in preparation for Thursday night. Melanie, on Thursday night, right after we do the roll call, if you could be prepared to have someone to give us a quick update on Gilbert Gets Out Week. And we'll do the typical where Susan loves this. We'll just do current events first, and then we'll move into the presentations. Related to introducing the Scouts, I have down Councilmember Daniels. The 2 items on the presentations, Pillar of the Month, Councilmember Ray. Agenda item number 1 and agenda item number 2. Not that others don't do service around here, Councilmember Peterson, but synonymous with service. Councilmember Peterson, if you could do the proclamation for number 2. To Vice Mayor Cooper. Well, I guess this is the part where I probably conduct this part to see for this study session who would like to ask about various items. Councilmember Peterson.
Mayor, I don't have any for the consent, so if there's time and at the pleasure of the council, I'd like to talk about 19 and 20 a little.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Ray? None. Vice Mayor Cooper? Councilmember Taylor? Councilmember Daniels? Councilmember Cook?
Yes. On agenda item number 8, I'll have to abstain from voting for that. I have a conflict of interest. And then when we get to agenda item 19, I'd like to request that we might break out one of the nonprofits as part of the voting, which would be the Child Crisis Center. I have a conflict of interest with that.
Thank you. I might do this twice in this meeting, kind of a current event. We do have, for those who are here at Council Chambers, 2 handouts. The Feathered Friends Festival on Saturday, April 6th, that I believe this is also on town website. Dana, would that be true? On the, okay. And so citizens, those who are here at Council Chambers can take the flyer, get more details, and then citizens can look it up. And then Thursday, prior to our town council meeting at 6 p.m., Operation Welcome Home, we are honoring 2 individuals, Specialist Daniel McDonald and Specialist Cody Whitlock. Looking forward to that. We invite the community to come and join us. 6 o'clock will begin right outside of council chambers and come in together as we're waving flags and cheering on those 2 individuals. The agenda items that I had also followed up with a few phone calls and maybe 1 or 2 that Edgar, on 6 and 7, this is not so much not understanding what was written, but more from a town council acumen standpoint, if we're understanding a filter. And if you could just let us know, describe it, and then for the future, how often we do this and what to expect. And so 60 seconds or less.
Mayor Lewis, council members, items 6 and 7 are for our CIP project WA90. It's for our filter media replacement project at the Northwire treatment plant. We have 18 filter medias in that treatment plant. It's actually the first time we're replacing the media since we've in operation of that treatment plant. So these are the first 4 filters that we're replacing. In general, we have 2 contracts on this council. One is for the procurement of the media itself, so just the purchasing of the media, and one for the construction contract to install it.
Thank you. And for future, how often do we do this?
Well, Mayor Lewis, this is the first time since it's been in operation that we're actually changing it. As we move forward, the remaining or the balance of the filter medias are going to be part of the operating the operating budget for the Northwire treatment plant. So next year we're going to see another 4 filters, and then the subsequent year another 4. Total 18.
18 filters, okay. Thank you. Thanks, Edgar. Agenda item number 9, this is more to turn to the council. This is for one of our businesses that has been a great partner with the town in helping us out with our Gilbert Junior High pool. And I might just, well, if there are no questions, we'll move on. And if not, I may have Manager Banjer make a comment on it. But it is a setting, again, where the town, the business community, our educational partner, Gilbert Unified School District, in this case, have come together. And I might just, any questions or full speed ahead? Then, full speed ahead. Agenda item, also under the public hearing, which we use more for clarification, and Patrick and Mark, I think you can answer this. On 18, there are 30 graphics that are being added to the Land Development Code. Just wanted to clarify, as I've been reading this, that it's the 30 graphics, but really not any major verbiage changes. Is that correct? Okay. Thank you. 19 and 20. Jessica, please. And should we do an overview of 19 and 20? Because this is public hearing, maybe I'll preface it this way, Jessica. The overview would be quick executive summary, and then we'll, on Thursday night, for the community and the public to have whatever additional details you'd like to give. But the quick overview, please.
Mayor, members of the council, items 19 and 20 are the initial staff recommendations for annual appropriations of general fund and federal community development block grant funds that we contract with nonprofits to provide human services to Gilbert residents. We did have a funding process in which we issued a request for proposals. Nonprofits applied for different priorities within those services that the council had identified, and staff reviewed and scored each application based on a weighted evaluation tool, and then made staff recommendations based on the tool and the information in the applications. And so before you, you will see a history of whether or not that applicant had applied last year, received funding, what they requested this year, and what staff recommendations are.
Thank you. Councilmember Peterson?
Mayor, mostly I just, I'm not going to repeat myself. I've talked about these issues enough. I'm sure people know my positions, at least today in study session. I won't repeat, but I'm just hoping for the courtesy, and last year council obliged me. I appreciate it very much. I've been able to separate the 8,000 donation funding from the other, so that I may vote on that separately. So I mainly just put that out there, and hopefully if everyone else will be okay with that, I'd like to vote on that separately.
Is that the 8,000 from neighbor to neighbor?
Yes,
okay.
Those are voluntary donations for the specific purpose of helping those in need. And
okay. So, are you, you know, a lot can happen in a year, and I forget some of the details. Do you support the 8,000, or do you have concerns?
Oh, I totally support the 8,000. That's the kind of giving that I want to see happen in our community. I'm working hard to try and see if we can increase those dollars and increase those voluntary giving opportunities. So absolutely support. I think that's beautiful.
Therefore, I do remember. So that's why the separation from the two funding sources.
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. And how about on 20? Was there any? I think I wrote down 19 and 20, but it may have just been 19. You said, was there anything on 20?
Yes, on 20, Mayor, I've expressed concern over federal funding for quite some time. You know, I've been very uncomfortable with it. And at this point, I would like, frankly, I'd like to see an end of all that kind of funding coming to Gilbert. And so the CDBG, I'm not only that, for reasons that I vote the way I do on 19, I also have problems with 20. So I'm planning on probably voting against that. I've got a couple questions that I'd like to ask more housekeeping, try and understand some things. Jessica, can you tell me, and maybe if it's too much to summarize now, can you give me some sense of what the eligibility requirements are for some of these programs that we would be funding on 20? And if that's a lot, can I just maybe get an email on that? Because I was just trying to understand that.
Mayor, Councilmember Peterson, are you asking about eligibility requirements for clients participating or eligibility for federal funding for the programs?
I was thinking about the clients, those that are receiving the help. So,
Generally, in order to receive, for a program to receive federal CDBG funds, the client must be 80% below area median income, which is set by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, or they must reside in a specific census block that has been determined by HUD as low income. Those are the broad general requirements. Usually a nonprofit or a program will have additional requirements depending on the service that they're providing. So if it's assistance to homeowners, then they need to show proof of homeownership, they need to show proof of citizenship, things like that.
just for my education, I'll call you on that. I'd like to dig through that a little bit. Thank you for some of that. High level is helpful too.
Thank you. And Jessica, probably not to have you answer, although you will have an opinion you may want to share, but I think for Patrick and Mark, as the two of you on this leadership table have experience with communities using CDBG funds and what the benefits and then maybe concerns that could be raised too. For the council, do the two of you have any guidance that you could give as we prepare to talk about 20 on Thursday night?
Mayor, just to be clear, in regards to use of CDBG funds?
I think
and benefits?
CDBG funds in general, from a professional standpoint, what they can do for a community, the benefits, and then, on the flip side, maybe as a council, some things that we should be reviewing or maybe going down a different path. And it's more that open-ended question as yearly we do have this discussion. And I guess in past years, town leadership has been in support of it. And from a council perspective, sometimes there are concerns, even as Councilmember Peterson expressed, that we do need to be paying attention to. But for a community in whole, let me rephrase it, is feeling same as last year? Is anything different that you would express as the council considers that?
Well, with CDBG funds in general, and if you like, we could prepare this as a session for our August council retreat to have a more robust discussion on it. CDBG funds actually have a very broad range of categories that you can utilize the funds for in a community, whether it be job creation in certain categories, whether it be low income, low interest or no interest loans for house repairs and modifications. There is a very broad use of CDBG funds beyond what we have used ours for here in Gilbert. Be more than happy to prepare for some information so maybe the council has a better understanding of the entire range of opportunities that exist and to help with your decision making.
And certainly in the council communication, there's a good summary. Mm-hmm. And yes, that might be helpful to have more dialogue. And I'm ready to move on, but at the same time, in preparation for Thursday, there's a philosophical viewpoint of the CDBG funds that we may not change any feelings or thoughts between now and Thursday, but at the same time, if we wanted to have any more dialogue right now, we could do it. Councilmember Taylor?
You know, federal dollars, of course, aren't free, and they typically come with strings. Jessica, this is what I forgot. I'm interested in, I don't know if right now you can just give us some highlights of what the town is obligated by accepting this money. Separately, I'd love to see the comprehensive list of requirements or regulations that the town is obligated to with this. And yes, I'm nerdy enough to read those things. But is there any particular themes or highlights in terms of what the town is obligated to should we receive these funds?
Mayor, Councilmember Taylor, on a very high-level explanation, there are a lot of regulations that we have to abide by receiving these funds, but on a high level, any use of these funds must meet one of their three national objectives, which is to remove slum and blight, to assist low to moderate income people, and in an emergency basis, which is not used very often. And then under those broad categories, there's a variety of different services that can be provided. And depending on that type of service, there are different regulations attached to that. So similar to what I was explaining to Councilmember Peterson, if you do a housing type of service, there's usually affordability periods. They can be grants, there can be loans, and with all of that comes different sets of regulations. So it really depends on what you do with the funds that will trigger different regulations, anywhere from environmental regulations that we have to follow through EPA to citizenship and things like that. As far as the town receiving funds, the process is that if you meet certain criteria, technically we don't apply for them. We submit an annual plan to HUD on what we plan on doing with that money. And that's essentially our contract for the year with HUD on how to use the funds. We do submit a 5-year consolidated plan on what we would do with the funds over a 5-year strategic period, and that will be ending in 2015. So we're kind of creeping close to the end of our 5-year plan, in which if the town wants to continue to receive CDBG funding, we would submit another 5-year plan and then an annual plan each year. And that's our contract, that's our reporting, that's everything in connection with receiving those funds.
And Jessica, the funds that are being recommended would be to support the senior center, administrative costs, the Central Arizona Shelter Services, the Emergency Home Repair Program, and the Family Promise of Greater Phoenix, which if, and some of those are funds that will be used, not just Gilbert, but, well, they'll be used to help Gilbert, but there are organizations that are helping Gilbert that are outside of Gilbert that those funds are going to. And so if we did not have the CDBG funds, what other sources, if we had desires to help these groups that are helping Gilbert residents, then we would just have to use local funds? Is that then the trade-off?
Mayor, yes, that would be correct. There are, such as last year, we used CDBG funds to do some infrastructure and some pedestrian safety downtown. So you could look at that as a CIP plan or part of the CIP plan. But the recommendations that you have before you for this next fiscal year would either come out of general funds or voluntary donations if we were to provide financial support to those organizations.
Thank you. Councilmember Peterson.
Mayor, and I'm not going to rehash some of my larger arguments that everyone's heard a million times, but I just want to, there's one point I want to make on this. First of all, I would question the appropriateness of the government action in this at all. But at the federal level, I certainly don't think that it's appropriate for them to be involved based on my own understanding of the Constitution, and I think they've far exceeded those bounds in many ways, and this would be an example of that. And just on a practical note, I think the problems we run into with waste I think, comes out of these kinds of things. If you look at our own financial policies, we'll state right even in there that if we have a revenue that's dedicated to a certain use and it's considered spent first when there's that use to be spent for, well, that makes sense. That's all it can go to, and the general fund or general purpose dollars have other uses we can use them for, so we use them up last. That's great, that's true. But it also means we're more careful with those dollars. There's a natural tendency to be less careful with those dollars because, again, they only have one use. Not only that, we don't have to raise the taxes to get those dollars. The federal government does, and that's far separated from us. I just think the accountability with this business is broken, and I've heard the argument that if we don't spend it here, they'll spend it somewhere else. Well, with the CDBG, I'm not sure that argument holds water. I know with the MAG funding, that might make sense, but with CDBG, I don't think that's true. If we say we don't need it, I think that they would cut it. I think they're looking for areas to cut that aren't needed. But even if that was true, I would ask who's accountable for all this spending. Locally, we say, well, they'll spend it somewhere else. At the federal level, when they're voting for the funding, they'll say, we're not spending it. We're not spending any money. We're just making it available to be spent. If they don't need it, they won't spend it. So who's really accountable? I mean, we've got to take some responsibility here. And, I think we all agree that the federal spending is out of control, and it does pass an unfair burden on future generations, and I think we need to do our part insofar as we can.
Thank you. Anything else on 20? Jessica, thank you. Before we leave Thursday night, planning, anything else that I think to Councilmember Daniels, I'll insert one more future meeting tonight as opposed to on Thursday, and that is a week from tomorrow will be the annual Mayor's Youth Leadership Summit. And it will be from 6:30 to 8 p.m. There is an electronic flyer that has been prepared that will start to be sent out, and the Mayor's Youth Advisory Council will be doing the final planning for that, and please spread the word. And speaking of that, Government Days. Government Days tomorrow and Thursday. That will mean that members of the Mayor's Youth Advisory Council will be shadowing town leadership, and there will be a new mayor and 6 council members that will, on Thursday, be conducting or facilitating or running a very effective youth town council meeting. And we look forward to that, and if public is available, I understand that will be broadcast and they can see our new town council in action. And yes, they, from past years, typically, at least the mayor, he really shines and kind of a show-off typically. No, we've had some great mayors in past years and looking forward to this year's mayor too. Anything else you want to add to that on Government Days?
No, Mayor, but it is, I heard it was about 90 people, youth from the community have registered for that program, and it's a great opportunity for them. So tomorrow and Thursday, 90 youth converge on Town Hall. Hope Patrick and team are ready.
Thank you. On the study session, agenda item number 2 is the presentation on schools and single-family zoning districts.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. Per request of Council Member Peterson, staff put together this information that I'm going to show you in a second, and has to do with researching other communities' provisions in their code, zoning code, for allowing schools, public and private, as our designation reads, within residential districts with lots of 2,000 or 3,000 square feet and other non-residential or multifamily districts. I think the idea was why Gilbert does not permit public or private schools within small lots residential designations. So we have these exhibit that shows a comparison. Gilbert is on the first row, and we can see that Gilbert permits it in all the larger lots, zoning designations, and does not permit it in the single-family detached, 3,000 and 2,000 square feet. Multifamilies are permitted, subject to you wanted to focus, okay. Let me see, auto manual, focus. Okay, contrast, out of focus, zoom in and out.
Should be able to zoom in.
Okay. So as I was stating, Gilbert does permit it in the low-density residential, does not permit it in single-family attached and detached, and multifamily subject to a use permit according to the location. On arterials and collectors is allowed, and they need a use permit for any other location. Commercial is permitted with exception of regional. Office permitted. Industrial not permitted, mainly not to impose unnecessary be aware regulations next to industrial uses, and the village core centers is permitted. Mesa is the second city that we research the same way. They permit it on larger lots subject to limitations for overflight areas. They do not permit it on 4,500 square feet or smaller lots. They permit it in the multifamily subject to overflight limitations, and also is not permitted on the most intense multifamily zone, which is residential multifamily type 5. And on commercial, permitted, a use permit is required. Permitted subject to a use permit. Office permitted subject to a use permit. Industrials not permitted in heavy industrial, and in other lighter industrial districts requires a use permit. And the village center, downtowns, and village cores is permitted as well, all throughout the 5 cities that we research, or 4 other cities. Tempe, permitted, use permit required on lots less than 1 acre. On smaller lots is permitted for publics. However, charter and private schools require a use permit. Multifamily use is permitted, and also on commercial permitted for charter, but instructional and public or private require a use permit. So you can tell that, you can see that what is the difference between town and the other cities. And Chandler is a good information. If you go and read their code, they need, for most of the zoning districts, they need a use permit. Talking to the planning manager, he said, Maria, we need to catch up with the code, but we, per legal advice, allow it everywhere. So this table reflects what their actual activity is, or how they go about that. Queen Creek, that's not permitted in office, and everywhere else is permitted. So we'll be happy to move forward with this information, with whatever direction council has for us, and add or require more if additional information is needed. And it was this regulation in place, or this provision, it was in place prior to the adoption of the new code, so it's nothing new for the town. I don't have an explanation specific. Last time I said that it could be because smaller lots have smaller setbacks, and although it's a use that is compatible, it presents some nuisances. We have in Gilbert 3 different school districts. Chandler school districts, for example, go all year round. There's more activity in their campuses, so we can go further and analyze any items as you wish. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Peterson. I remember having this discussion, but I have forgotten why. Can you refresh us?
This came up, Mayor, because we had one of our zoning, it was a rezone case that was needed. We ended up approving that was needed because SFA&D didn't allow the schools in the district. And I got to thinking about it, and I couldn't think of a really great reason, especially if it's allowed in multifamily. And, the idea is to have your school mixed in with the neighborhood so people can walk to school. It's a part of your local area there. I think that's a good thing. I don't think it's incompatible. And so, there's other communities that that allow it too, and I think that that'd be fine. So I would prefer we go ahead and add it and make it permitted. That's my opinion, but, I'm glad to
And that would be for the multifamily column?
Well, at least there's a way to get it done in multifamily, and maybe we do something similar in the SFA and D as to what we do in multifamily, that there's a use permit. Oh, it depends on where it is. So we could do something similar to multifamily if we've got concerns related to what Maria said with the smaller setbacks and things like that. But I certainly think there should be a way to do it without having to rezone and whatnot. So.
Thank you. Other council member comments?
Mayor?
Vice Mayor Cooper?
Yeah, I'd be willing to look at that with, I'd like to understand more, but potentially with the look at multifamily being perhaps a model. I mean, I'd like to at least understand that a little bit more, so be willing to continue the dialogue.
Thank you. Councilmember Taylor?
Just echo that. Yeah, I'd love to visit that and see if that's a good model for Gilbert. There's certainly some proven models give that flexibility for some developers and good neighborhoods, and add a little spectrum to our educational offerings here.
Sure. So to Councilmember Peterson, thank you for starting the dialogue, and I would hear from those three comments that we'd like to take a next step, and that is to look at it in more detail. Maria, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll give town leadership that assignment.
Okay.
Thank you. We will move now to agenda item number 3. Presentation and discussion on the proposed fiscal 2014 budget, long-term financial plan, and updated financial policies. Dawn?
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'm Dawn Irvine with the Office of Management and Budget here at the Town of Gilbert. We're going to be coming to you over the course of the next couple of study sessions, going through a lot of detail relating to the budget recommendations. And we wanted to start that by setting a platform for those conversations. So as we move into the budget for recommended budget for fiscal year 2014, we thought it was important that we revisit the process itself, what the recommendations are going to be reflecting as we come back to the next couple of weeks, and what some of those key components are. One of the most important concepts that we wanted to present to you today is that everything that you'll be seeing over the course of the next few weeks is all compiled towards moving the town of Gilbert forward in its progress in terms of becoming a sustainable community with those long-range financial plans that we've been discussing for some time now. So I do have an opportunity today to share with you some of the progress that we've made on those financial plans, and then how that all ties together to the budget process. First of all, we've been working on that long-range financial plan for some time now. We've got we've talked about the components of that and the level of detail that goes into creating that. You see up on the screen in front of you some of the key members that have been integral parts of developing this long-term financial plan. Our first deliverable that you'll be seeing in the next couple of weeks really sets the fiscal environmental analysis for that long-range financial plan, and that's something that the key group of employees from throughout the town has been very instrumental in helping to pull together. So what we're calling our analysis phase has taken a look at our financial status in a number of different ways. One is looking historically at where we've seen those trends. Now, obviously, we have a couple of different things that have been going on here in our community. One is the recession that was affecting not only our state and our nation, but countries throughout the world, and that obviously had a very real impact to us in terms of our revenues and our expenditures and the needs that came about from that recessionary period. But we're also seeing things at a more local level. The town has grown tremendously particularly over a 15-year period of time, but we're transitioning more into that growth, from a growth community to one of more maintenance, and we want to make sure that as we mature as a community, that is taken into account. And so what our focus has been is not only on looking at those trends where we've been at through that recession, but also where we've been and where we're going as a community as well. And so we do that looking at that, particularly paying close attention to the last 5 years of history and looking at some of those trends. And you'll see we break that out into great detail. But then furthermore, we look at some of the revenue and expenditure forecasting moving forward. Again, not just in terms of some of the cyclical things that you'll see that we normally would be looking at, what we're anticipating based on the economy, but also what we anticipate based on our community-specific needs and where we are at in our own growth spectrum. And then very much a key component of this is the debt analysis. That's looking not just at our existing debt, but what it would take to be able to continue to move our capital program forward, what those responsible revenue sources would be to be able to do so, and then prioritizing those as well. Now, while we're looking at our financial trends, it's also important as we start to look forward to make sure that we have the right financial policies in place. And in the last fiscal year, the council approved the financial policies for the town of Gilbert. As part of our annual budget process, we review those financial policies, and we'll be bringing back recommendations to the council for those policies. As we discussed last year when we looked at those financial policies, the repair and replacement funds are really dynamic right now. Again, very much based on where we are as a community. So as we look out, not just in the 5-year plan, but in the 10, 15, 20, 30, and 30 years out for Gilbert and looking at where we need to be as we approach build out, again, we're shifting from a model of building and expanding to one, while we're still having to build and expand, we're also having to make sure that we're doing major maintenance, that we're factoring in any type of reconstruction that may need to occur or replacement of infrastructure as our existing infrastructure begins to age. And so we're overlaying that with available revenue streams, making sure that we have the appropriate revenues in place and that we've identified what those needs will be. So you'll see an update to the repair and replacement fund policies this time around, but you will also see some changes to that coming in the next year as we are able to fully integrate those long-range infrastructure plans that we've been working so diligently on. And then additionally, you're going to see a debt policy. And that debt policy is very important for a community, particularly one such as ours, because it is, when we look at debt, obviously we know that being responsible stewards of taxpayer dollars and of debt is very much an important part of the process that we have here. But we want to make sure that we're utilizing debt in the most responsible way possible. What that means is not only are we issuing debt in a manner that we can afford and can continue to afford, but we're doing it for the right reasons and we're doing it at the right time. So this debt policy will be taking into account those types of issues. When is debt absolutely the right way to finance capital projects? How do we want to look at structuring our debt? How do we ensure that we continue to receive those high ratings from the credit rating agencies that really reflect the financial policies and responsible financial practices that we've put into place? Any questions on the update for the financial policies? Well, what I did want to start with today as we move into the next couple of study sessions where we bring back the budget and the recommendations themselves is a look back at the process that we've been through this year. As Council knows, the last couple of years in particular have been very, very much collaborative processes, bringing in stakeholders from throughout the town. Budget is not something that's done in an office or a back office. This is something that is done bringing in the stakeholders involved in the operations of the town itself and making sure that we have the budget in place to successfully be able to implement those operations. So it really takes all of these components that you see here. We start with the strategic initiatives. We have that direction from council that really lets us know where the community is going. And so that sets the roadmap for us. And with those strategic initiatives in place and the direction that we have from council, we want to make sure that everything about our budget represents the direction that the town is going. Our budget process then, as I mentioned, was a collaboration with members throughout the town, and then ultimately resulted in presentations amongst the executive team members or the department directors to each other, so that there was this understanding amongst all of the departments of what the needs were throughout the town, that we weren't focused just on our own functional areas, but as leaders of the town, what are the greatest needs of the town, and how do we make sure that we have the resources available to make that happen. And then again, all of this is tying into that long-range financial plan. Now, the town has always had 5-year plans, which is an exemplary business practice, and that's something that's been recognized by our rating agencies. But as the council knows, moving forward, we're going beyond that 5 years. We're looking at build-out. We're looking at what does this community need and how do we get ourselves there. And so everything that you'll see presented to you in the upcoming weeks is really geared towards setting us up for success in the long term. So with those strategic initiatives, and I put these up there not because they're unfamiliar to you, but because you'll see as those requests come before you that the requests are really going to be focused on these key areas. As we look at community livability, you'll see that we've addressed some maintenance issues in parks and other areas where perhaps we've had to defer the maintenance before. So now we're able to come back and revisit that and ensure that our budget includes the ability to deal with some of those issues. The technology leader, you'll see emphasis, for example, on disaster recovery and disaster preparedness. We'll have redundancies and such to ensure that we're able to continue to provide outstanding services to our community, even in the case of emergencies or outages. The long and short-term balanced financial plan, that's really been a foundation for all of the conversations that we've had, ensuring that we are balanced not just in the upcoming fiscal year, but in all of the years to come. The infrastructure needs, again, we're going to be coming back to council with several issues that start to address this, but you will see in the upcoming months, in the beginning of the new fiscal year, you're going to be seeing a lot of information related to that long-range infrastructure plan, what it needs to look at, again, approaching build-out, and then working into the following budget year, that's where you'll really start to see that emphasis on the long-range infrastructure plan. We continue to, as you know, last year when we looked at economic development, that was an area of focus for the budget for the current fiscal year, and the executive team felt that it was very important that we look at that, assess where we are at right now, and ensure that we continue that momentum forward so that we're able to continue to support economic development and that really is generating that future that we're looking at for the town. And then above all, we're looking at high-performing government. So while you'll see several requests supporting all of these strategic initiatives, every conversation that we had, every recommendation that we'll be bringing back to you was done with the idea in mind, how do we offer this service in the best possible way at the lowest possible cost? So again, what you'll see over the next couple of weeks, we'll be coming back with and I apologize, it looks like our text got off just a little bit, but we'll be back with those budget recommendations here over the next couple of weeks. You'll see the revisions themselves to the financial policies. We'll be coming back with the CIP as well, and you'll see the matrix that we use to prioritize those capital projects. We are going to be asking council to consider adopting the amendments to those financial policies so that we have those firmly in place as we move forward. And then we'll be bringing back those proposed budgets to council in May with a final adoption scheduled for June. So one reminder, as we do come back with that tentative budget adoption that is currently scheduled for May 16th, at that point in time, we'll be asking council to adopt the maximum level of appropriation, as it's called, and that sets a threshold for the town expenditures for the following fiscal year. After that amount is adopted by council, council has the ability to move budget within certain areas or to lower the budget but not to raise the budget. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Councilmember Cook.
Thank you for the presentation. Last year, you were able to share with us that you've identified through the zero-based methodology about 200 lines of services. My question is, I would love to understand out of those 200 plus, which ones are classified as, and maybe you've already done this, classified as mission critical, critical, and non-critical. I'd love to have some understanding of that as we get closer to looking at your recommendations.
Mayor, Councilmember Cook, we can certainly revisit that and take a look at those services, look at those that are, we looked at them not only in terms of critical, but as core and non-core. We found that there are many non-core services that are still considered critical. So it was important to distinguish between both. While that sounds odd, I can probably offer a good example. In the fire department, for example, oftentimes we'll do car seat checks. That's not a core service of the fire department, but we feel it's a critical service to our community to ensure that we have the ability for parents to come in and have the car seat checked and ensure it's safely installed. So there's certain things that we do that are not considered core that we considered important.
Councilmember Peterson?
I just wanted to make sure I understood the timeline. Are we getting about 2 weeks to study the budget before we have to adopt a preliminary? Is that what I'm saying proposed?
We'll be bringing back many of the recommendations on April 16th, so you'll have a month between April 16th and the preliminary adoption on May 16th.
All right, that's helpful. I appreciate, the more time, as far as I'm concerned, the better, but a month is very good. Thank you.
Yeah. Don, thank you. Carry on. To the council agenda item number 4, any discussion on that tonight? Our April 2nd, 2013 study session is adjourned.